פרק בסדרת צלילי ריקוד, המספרת על הבלטים הידועים בעולם מנקודת מבטם של טובי הרקדנים והקוריאוגרפים. והפעם, ג'יזל, אחד הבלטים הרומנטיים האהובים ביותר, עם קטעי הופעה של הבולשוי אלמה. צפייה מענה לכם.
La Sylphide, the story of a winged creature whose death is brought about by a magic scarf. Swan Lake, the tale of a prince who gives his heart to a beautiful bird. And the Sleeping Beauty, the famed fairy tale of a dormant princess awakened by a kiss. There isn't a dancer in the world who can look at these ballets and not think, what silly stories. It's hard to believe that such beautiful dancing can come out of such a silly story. In fact, the story of Gizelle and the other great romantic ballets are so absurd that even the biggest names in ballet have a hard time coming to grips with them.
So many times I go out and watch a ballet, I go out in the audience and I watch a ballet and I'm struck by how ridiculous it is, how silly it is, how can people pay money to see this?
And yet, despite their lack of depth and relevance, these stories have survived. People continue to flock to them. If there is a reason, it's probably because over the years, dancers have responded to the challenge that these stories pose, the challenge of making this material, as impossible as it may seem, believable. If ballet is about anything, it is about the dancer's capacity for lending a sense of realism to superficial scenarios.
Even though, you know, it's terribly melodramatic, the storyline, I find it so incredibly powerful as a piece of drama.
That sense of reality is essential to the most representative of the romantic ballets. In Gizelle, a prince, Albrecht, disguises himself as a commoner and rivals a suitor, Hilarion, for the affections of a peasant girl. Albrecht swears his love for Gizelle, and the two dance joyously. But Gizelle's mother reminds her that she is not supposed to exert herself. In time, Albrecht is exposed. Further, it is revealed that he is promised to another. Gizelle goes mad. She collapses and dies. The second act takes place in the eerie woodland inhabited by the Willies, spirits of young girls who have been jilted and died before their wedding day. A sorrowful Albrecht enters, but any mortal who invades the supernatural domain is doomed to death. The Wheelies attempt to dance Albrecht to the point of exhaustion, but G'zelle intercedes and saves the prince's life. Happens every day, right? Nevertheless, the story of G'zelle differs from those of other ballets.
I mean, it's just such a beautiful, simple story. And on one hand, I mean, I guess all these full lengths, they're fairy tales, and I guess, you know, if you really look at it with a realistic point of view, then, you know, kind of improbable. But, you know, not really. If you think about it, you know, somebody could, I mean, who hasn't loved somebody enough that you just die, you know, die of a broken heart, or feel like you would anyway, you know. And then in the second act, be able to forgive that same person and be happy, you know. I mean, it's not so unbelievable, I don't think.
You're right, it's not, but
you know, I mean, the format is the story in La La La, but the essence of these feelings are real.
Exactly. In other words, in G'zelle, there's a greater emphasis on character.
One really has to do true acting in G'zelle, because there is a profound feeling in G'zelle like no other ballet really has. And particularly for her, for the ballerina, G'zelle is a very, very challenging role.
I find G'zelle sensual in that textures are interesting to her. I mean, she likes feeling the softness of the grass or the petals of a flower, or that kind of sense. And that she really is on the verge of a sexual awakening, and that's what Albrecht brings out in her.
The role of Albrecht is one of the few male parts in romantic ballet that offers dimension. It's a rare and welcome opportunity for the male dancer to make a sizable dramatic contribution.
It's a time where he displays for the first time physical strength in his dancing, romanticism, lyrical feelings, and acting all come together.
The question arises, how does a dancer go about becoming an actor?
I think what's important to get to that point for any performer is the person has to be human. That's what makes a heroic figure, is that he has weaknesses. That's what makes people who may come to a ballet who don't know what ballet is, or maybe have seen it a few times but are intimidated by it because they don't know how to talk about it. You know, what were those twirly things they did? Well, wasn't that jump cool? You know, but they're intimidated to talk about it because they don't understand the lingo or the language. Yet, if they can relate to something, to the humanness of a particular character, it takes the intimidation away. I mean, they can literally walk away and say, I enjoyed that, and you know what? I think I understood it. And that's enough. You know, that's a different type of conversation as you leave the theater. Instead of trying to pretend that you knew that, well, gee, his form looked kind of good, but of course I don't know anything about that. You know, it makes it more user-friendly.
For the dancer, the potential drama of G'zelle makes it one of the most inviting ballets to dance.
Well, I probably could say G'zelle is one of the reasons that I dance. It's the first ballet that I can remember having a profound influence on me. We had books of the Kirov and the Bolshoi, and I have these very vivid memories of going through the book and seeing pictures of the mad scene. And I was especially taken by the drama of that.
G'zelle is the ballet which most clearly defines the universe of the Romantics, a universe comprised of two worlds, reality and fantasy. It was developed in 1832 by dancer and choreographer Jules Perrault as a vehicle for his lover, the Italian ballerina Carlotta Grisi. For Grisi, Perrault created a character of such depth that today, G'zelle is to ballerinas what Hamlet is to male actors. The difficulty and beauty of the title role is that it personifies both parts. The first act, the village act, is especially difficult as it climaxes in the famous mad scene. In order to make this scene successful, ballerinas have to approach the role with the psychoanalytical skill of a method actor.
A lot of times I've seen performances that are excellently danced, and then you come to the mad scene and you say, oh, here's the mad scene. And I think the key is to try to understand how can you make that bridge, how from the very first minute that you open that door, do you introduce yourself to the audience to let them know the elements of your character, that when you get to the mad scene, they kind of go, oh yeah, that's pretty normal in her character. That's the way it's a normal transition for her. You're not surprised that she goes mad, because you see beforehand that she's passionate, that she's on the brink, she feels everything very deeply.
Albrecht's motivation is essential in triggering her madness.
You have to decide if you're playing the male role, how are you going to play it? Are you going to be a well-meaning Lothario, or are you going to be nasty and then suddenly have a change of heart? There are many interpretations.
And it always came the most natural that, to me, that he was truly in love with her from the beginning, that he had visited her often in the village, and that he just had no idea. He didn't think for 1 minute what the consequences could be. And that he, almost like she, they were just young and foolish. And also he was, she doesn't know that he's of a higher class since he's dressed as a peasant, but still there's something about him which I think she falls for that thing. He's not like real Hilarion. When she walked with Hilarion, they talk about the hunt of the day. When she walks with Albrecht, he might, you know, recite poems for her or whatever. And in that respect, I think that she also falls in love with, you know, maybe his worldliness.
I start more analyzing it, and more I analyze, I start hating Albrecht. Because I don't think he's an honest character. I think he just went down to the village for a little hanky-pank and just used that poor G'zelle. I don't think, really, G'zelle meant to him a great deal. It was just like a freedom and have a good time.
A good time that turns to tragedy. A tragedy that takes us to the end of Act 1. During the intermission, the ballerina prepares herself for the second act.
You put on this wonderful white stuff all over your arms, and you have a very soft pair of pointe shoes that are, again, you pancake them, you change the hair, so your whole look is completely different. So you're in a different outfit. You become the ghost in a sense. You work from the minute that you leave the stage to become a spirit physically. So it is a little bit easier. You can concentrate on the dancing steps.
Because it takes place in a world of make-believe, it requires less dramatic range. But what the second act lacks in dramatic depth, it makes up for in technical demand.
As G'zelle, you're a spirit. You're no longer of this world. You really are surreal, because you're a life that has been muffled, and that comes back to life in another plane. And how I got there in the dressing room, I'm not sure. I know, I mean, if you want to know, like, mundane things, I'd slam my pointe shoes until there was no stuffing left in them, and they just couldn't make a sound. And virtually, you'd be physically testing your body to its ultimate, because, in fact, they weren't pointe shoes anymore. They were literally just a coating around your feet, and yet you were going to be up on your points and give the effect that you were not even on the ground, but above the ground.
A tremendous amount of stamina, especially the second act, physical stamina, and to appear weightless and spiritual requires such incredible physical control that I think that's what I find. So it's more the physical preparation to be able to take it to another level. That's the most difficult part.
Yes, it seems to me that G'zelle becomes stronger after her death. I think that's the key to the second act, because she, with her light steps, has to nonetheless save her beloved Albrecht. And her love gets stronger and more concentrated because it's her love that saves Albrecht.
But I somehow grew stronger in the second act. I started understanding more how to try and create an otherworldly appearance, just even by walking, to try and make it appear like she doesn't step on solid ground, and continuous movement through space. And it also helps to have a terrific partner who, you know, your feet never touch the ground.
No doubt by now you're wondering, all right, what's with the box? It's rosin, the same stuff a baseball pitcher uses on his hands. And dancers use it for the same reason pitchers do. Rosin increases the friction between two surfaces, like a hand and a ball, or in ballet's case, the underside of a point shoe and a hard floor. That way, when dancers make their way along the stage, there's less chance of slippage. This is especially important for the male dancer in G'zelle, particularly in the ballet's final moments where he almost literally wears down the floor. When it comes to getting the most out of his prince, Perrault saved the best for last.
I could get in and talk for hours about the development of the character and what a fulfilling thing that was, and what a beautifully structured ballet that is. But you do virtually nothing physically of any taxing nature until the last 7 minutes of the ballet. And I timed it. It's 7 minutes is when all hell breaks loose. And I found that it wasn't. I didn't have to act like I was tired. I was exhausted. When I hit the ground, I didn't think I was going to be able to get back up. And I thought, use it. Maybe they'll think you're a brilliant actor.
By the time the end of the ballet comes, you're tired. How do you feel?
Tired?
G'zelle could have stood on other merits. Adolphe Adams' score, for example, which in its musical depth precluded Tchaikovsky.
And the music, which was considered a milestone because it gave you a ballet score in which characters had their own leitmotifs you'd hear in Gizelle's music, Albrecht's music, somebody else's music, and you could follow it on that level.
And it's funny because the music for G'zelle is so soupy, and yet it suits the piece so well. It fits like a glove. And, it's not something you would put on at home and listen to. But when in the theater and at a performance of G'zelle, it totally plays its role to the full, to the maximum.
But more than any other ballet, G'zelle taught dancers the importance of acting. And it's that ability that has helped to elevate the lesser ballet scenarios, La Sylphide, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, to the realm of relevance and believability. Let's go back to Karen's clip.
So many times I go out and watch a ballet, go out in the audience and I watch a ballet and I'm struck by how ridiculous it is, how silly it is, how can people pay money to see this? But that is only when the people who are involved in it are not really involved in it. And they are only dancing the steps, and they are only conscious of the technique, and they're only showing me how high they can lift their leg or how many turns they can do. When it is at that level, I find it ridiculous, and I have no interest in watching it. And I will just listen to the music, because usually the music is still so beautiful and so haunting that. But when I see performers who commit themselves and who lives and breathes in the clothes he's wearing and the time and all of that, and then I go with it. And I feel the audience, they always want to go. They always want to suspend their disbelief and feel the story and go with it, no matter how silly it is, superficially silly it is. If they really are taken on a voyage with the performers, they will go. Most of them will go with you.